And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard
a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river. Euphrates, and the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for now and a day and a month and a year, but to slay the third part of men, and the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000.
and I heard the number of them.
And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone. And the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these three was the third part of men killed, by the fire, and by the smoke, and by the brimstone which issued out of their mouth. For the power is in their mouth, and in their tails, for the tails were like serpents.
Hello, good day. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing our study in the book of Revelation. We're in chapter 9. We'll begin by reading it. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and to them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men, and they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. They had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron, and their sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. And there was power, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. One woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, Loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000. And I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these 3 was the third part of men killed, by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone which issued out of their mouths. And their power is for their power is in their mouth, and in their tails, for their tails were like unto serpents, and had heads, and with them they do hurt. And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils, and idols of gold, and silver, and brass, and stone, and of wood, which neither can see, nor hear, nor walk. Neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. And that'll be enough to cover today. Hi there, Formula. All right. Or the fifth angel. And so we already see a lot of things coming down from heaven in the trumpets. Starting with the second trumpet, where there was a mountain, not necessarily from heaven, right? But it fell into the sea, which we could think of as being from the sky. We talked about that. Or it could be potentially something more, what we call it, more conventional, like a landslide or a volcano or something like that. I prefer the celestial interpretation, meaning that it's some sort of impactor. And now here we have another star fall from heaven, an object from the sky appearing like a star, a bright light in the sky coming down. But it is clearly here identified as a person. It is to him. And the star here, and remember we saw in chapter 1 that the angel of the bottomless pit, that the 7 stars that were portrayed next to Christ were the 7 angels of the churches. Now, that doesn't mean that this, of course, is one of the angels of the churches, but stars can represent angels, certainly. Messengers from heaven. Celestial bodies come down visibly, can be like shooting stars and stuff like that, but this is the angel of the bottomless pit, and he's given the key of the bottomless pit, and he opens it. Now, remember, this is given in vision. So, there's some of this is, I take to be quite on the nose literal, like that there is going to be an angel cast out of heaven. And I think that's what this is portraying. Satan being cast out of heaven, Satan falling as lightning from heaven. And he will then obtain, it says his angels were cast out with him. But here they come up out of the bottomless pit, because I do believe these are the demons, Satan's angels. If that's indeed what demons are. Sometimes we suppose, demons are the fallen angels. They could also be just evil spirits that exist apart from being fallen angels. But, either way is nothing to be dogmatic about. All right, so they come out of the bottomless pit. There's a smoke out of the bottomless pit. There's a smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. Remember, I was talking about this. We know that when Christ returns, the sun and the moon will be darkened and all that. But this starts off with the sun and the moon are darkened by a third. They're partially darkened because we are expecting a great apostasy. It's one of the things that Paul clearly taught, that the day of Christ's return would not come, and neither will we be gathered to him until that man of sin appear, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Now, whether or not that has to be a literal temple remains to be seen. I would keep my eyes open for that, but also be aware that there could be more spiritual interpretations. The apostasy, like it says, shall we make the members of Christ, know you not that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit? Would you make their bodies are the members of Christ? Would you make the members of Christ the members of an harlot? By being one with a harlot. And that should not be. And similarly, in the spiritual sense, Paul talked about how he had espoused us to one husband, that we should be as a chaste virgin to Christ. In that context, Satan appearing as an angel of light, and also coming to perhaps heal the deadly wound, whatever form that takes. That's somewhat mysterious. We'll read about that more in chapter 13. But if it's a wound to the political system, we see we live in a very fragile time where the political systems and, they're not necessarily, it's not just the political system. Well, like you take out the electricity or have an impact or anything like that. We see how during the pandemic, how quickly people just surrendered their freedoms in order to have a sense of safety. Not that they actually got safety. In fact, I'm sure someday, if we have time enough, someday they'll understand how much damage really was done by the actions of the government as opposed to helping anything. Sometimes it'd be better if they just did nothing. But not that there aren't things that can be done to help situations, but oftentimes people's conflicted motivations cause things to fall apart. Anyways, I do think that there'll be some sort of great collapse of the system brought on by perhaps the things we see in the trumpets. It'll cause the system, everyone's going to think the world is coming to an end. They're going to say, this is it. The world's over. And I believe the Antichrist will step into that to give people a sense that and hope that, no, it'll be all right. We just have to do whatever he says. We have to be obedient to him and ultimately to worship him. Now, remember, worship, it's not necessarily an overt thing. That's why the mark of the beast is in the forehead or in the hand. And I think that indicates the dual nature. Jesus said, whoever you yield your members to obey, that's who your master is, to paraphrase him. And when you yield yourself to obey Satan, you're allowing him to have the mastery over you. When we do the works of Satan with our hands, so to speak, then, meaning you don't necessarily have to even believe in the devil, because people will tell themselves, I am very confident of this, that when the end times come and there's no easy solution and the Antichrist appears, and even there'll be people who do not believe in him and maybe even know who they are, but they think that, well, what I really think up here is I can serve Satan with my hands, but as long as I keep my mind on, I really love Jesus, well then, because that's the doctrine people already follow. They don't make the good faith effort to work with God to become sanctified, to put our sins away from us, so that we could walk worthy of the calling we've been called to. And that isn't salvation. That's the result of salvation. That's our reasonable service, to offer our bodies as a living sacrifice. Because we are supposed to serve him. If we aren't serving him, what are we serving? Ourselves? Then we have made ourselves an idol. If we are serving sin, then we're serving Satan. Okay, anyways, but I just say that because I do believe that this army is Satan's angels. Maybe that, do they come? Now, the bottomless pit and the smoke could be symbolic, I suppose. Meaning, because I do believe he's cast out, and it says, and his angels were cast out with him. Well, if he's going to the bottomless pit to fetch up the angels, then how did they not come? Maybe there's some other thing. Maybe this is sort of the unleashing of other demonic forces besides the angels which are cast out with him. Perhaps. Just a thought. All right, so the sun and the air will be darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And again, this could be from things like even when the mountain burning with fire is cast in the sea, that will cause, if that is an impact or a volcano, it's going to cause the sun and the moon to be darkened already. And I've thought in the past that maybe the two are connected somehow, that he sort of emerges from that impact, or from the impact zone, perhaps. I don't know. That could be sort of the opening of the... And again, remember, bottomless pit is literally the pit of the abyss. The pit of the abyss. And the abyss usually refers to the sea. So like there's an abyss in the sea. Now that's very interesting, because some of those unidentified aerial phenomenon they talk about them moving underwater without slowing down. Though honestly, part of me wants to think a lot of that stuff is just a psyop, where they're creating these images of these things to sort of get people thinking in that direction. But on the other hand, because I feel like if Satan was able to manifest in the world and talk to leaders and stuff, like as they suggest, that these that the government's been in contact with these creatures or whatever, beings that are supposedly tens of thousands of years ahead of us technologically, if it's even technological. That could be how they present themselves. I always like to keep my mind open to be ready for whatever. Okay, so they're called locusts. That, of course, brings my mind to Joel chapter 3. We did Joel recently. Not 3, Joel chapter 2, where he talks about the locust army there. And it's also associated with the day of the Lord. In fact, we mentioned the locust of Revelation. And like I said, what is it about locusts? Well, when grasshoppers sort of become a locust plague, they're everywhere and on everything. And I think that's why he uses the analogy of a locust, the symbology of a locust, because locusts are a plague, and they are, they're devastating the crops and all that stuff. But obviously, these aren't normal locusts. They're not focused on eating plants. They want to torment men. And a torment here clearly means to cause pain. And I guess that's something I should take in mind when I go to Revelation 20. At least contextually, it seems to quite clearly mean to cause pain. But also, like I said, Now that's one literal way of looking at it. There's more, but there's an implication of the idea of torment. And I'm going to bring it up here. I just got to get my right chat. I've been having so many problems with my computer today. I had to roll it back. I'm not going to bore you with that. All right, Revelation 9. Let's look at this word torment. I'm going to bring it up on your screen in just a second. They should not hurt the grass, neither any green thing, but only the men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. That's why I said that's the most important thing. That's what's holding it back, is the gospel must be preached. And also, there's something, it's not just like, you know what I mean? Like, it's possible for someone to be a nominal believer, but to not be sealed with the Holy Spirit of promise. But also, I think it's more than just the Holy Spirit. It's a certain revelation of God. It's what, like I said, what is it? What is it? It's like, it's whatever it is that makes it that you will not worship the beast. Whatever it takes, whatever that happens to be, that keeps you back, that keeps you loyal to Christ, and that you will not serve the devil. If it's knowledge, if it's righteousness, whatever it is you need. Like I said, there will be people, I mean, I remember when I used to smoke cigarettes, I think like, well, you know, what if I need what if I run out of cigarettes and Satan's like, hey, here's a cigarette. Just bow down and worship me. Oh, you can have it. You know, like, you don't want to have weaknesses. You don't want to be serving Satan in any way, shape, or form. All our sins should be these little accidents that happen. That we're like, or something like, I didn't go the extra mile like Jesus commanded. That's a sin to me. Because Christians have a higher standard. I had an idle word. You know, I had an errant idle word. What a wretched man I am. You know, we got to get to that level where our sins are these little piddly things that we're trying to stamp out, and we still take them seriously, and we're not losing our minds over them. But we're trying to obey Christ in good faith. And where's my word torment? Seek death. I know what that means. Torment. There we go. Let's hear. And I think I like this, understanding the symbology of the locust army here. Basanismos. Okay. Torture, right? Torment, rack, proves, reveals the real state. Interesting. Subjective agony that corresponds to an objective basis. That is, as the torment rack proves, reveals the real state of affairs. Because the word basanismos comes from, we'll get down here, basanizo. Basanizo really means to examine as by torture. That is, to torment. Buffet as waves batter. But I liked the root meaning here from strong. Let me get down to the bottom. From basanos, a touchstone. A dark stone used in testing metals. And hence examination by torture. At the root of the idea of torture in Greek, basanos, basanismos, you know, the torment, is this idea of putting something to the grindstone, so to speak, to spark the metal to determine what kind of metal it is. That's how you do that. And also that's a way you can, you know, cause someone to be tortured, right? You can put their nose to the grindstone literally, but that actually means that's a different idiom. Anyways, but that idea of extracting why do you torture people? What is the purpose of torturing people? Why not just kill them? You know, is it just to cause the pain and suffering? No, but it is through the pain. Usually the point is to extract from them, like, okay, where's the bomb? That's the justification they try to use. Like after the World Trade Center was destroyed, they instituted the Patriot Act, and they began talking about using extraordinary interrogation techniques, torture, which is absolutely abhorrent. That because here's the thing: people say, "Well, God tortures." It's like God is God. God kills. He makes alive. He is the one who has the right to execute judgment on all of us. We don't have that right. Men do it. It's given to certain men to be in that position, but woe unto them who do not execute it faithfully. I'm telling you. Because they will have a harsher judgment. Those who sat in judgment. So God, I would, last thing in the world I want to be is a judge. I mean, not that people can't do it faithfully, but you got to do it faithfully. And not necessarily not the last thing. I don't want to make it like that's, I would be afraid or something, but there's a heavy thing to that. Just like being a teacher. If I hadn't gotten into it a long time ago, I think in wisdom I would have stayed away. Because it's like, it's hazardous to take up God's word and start saying, this is what God says, this is what God wants. Oh. Anyways. Masana is originally a black silicone-based stone used as a touchstone to test the purity of precious metals, to tell if there's been any impurities in there. I like all that analogy of it because torture has an idea of painful testing. You know, it's also a test in the sense of will they give up the information. You know, and the idea is you cause someone pain and they'll tell us, what is the terrorist plot? Who are you working with, etc. And I've said that sort of idea behind torment is the way I spiritually interpret the torment. There's a purpose to it. It's not just pain for pain's sake. Torture is pain for a reason. And I like the idea of extraction of information as opposed to just purely punitive. I don't think it's purely punitive. Okay, so their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. My old teacher used to point out that, you know how a scorpion takes its prey? Well, he stings them and then they vomit their digestive juices into them till they turn all to jelly and then they drink it up. The only thing is, that may be how they eat food, but that's not what it says exactly. And that's an interesting point, and maybe there's something to it, but I just don't, that's why I mentioned it in passing, but I don't really subscribe to that idea. I think it goes back to the pain caused by a scorpion sting. Not all scorpions are deadly. You know, it causes pain. So, and that can be, it can last for days. I suppose it could last for days, but their point is that they torment them for 5 months. As a scorpion, they sting. And I think the reason they use the scorpion is because the scorpion has a tail. And that's why. And, it's not quite an insect. It's not an insect, obviously. But they look similar to insects, locusts. A scorpion, those crustaceans are certainly related to insects, so we assume, because of their body type and their exoskeleton. But so these are, these. Did I mention the reason I talk about the locusts is because of their ubiquitousness? They're going to be everywhere, meaning you will not be able to escape this. I mean, those who have the seal of God on their forehead will not be affected by their torment. They will not be able to torment us because we have the information in our head that will prevent us from being tormented by them. Because we will know because we will recognize them for what they truly are. Like I said, people are going to know it's the end of the world, but they're not going to recognize things for what they are. And they're given symbolically like this so that people will not understand what they are. And they're almost certainly to be outwardly something completely the opposite. Like I said, Satan himself disguised as an angel of light. And they will pretend to be angels of light and seduce the inhabitants of the world to worship the beast as part of their mission, I think. And that is the root of where the torment is coming from. And it's like, I don't know. Yeah, it's tough because it's like, I feel like I don't want to go contrary to the literal meaning. But I almost believe it's almost going to be kind of the opposite. In a sense, because receiving the mark of the beast ultimately results in torment. Right? It ultimately, they will be, those who receive the mark of the beast are tormented in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And also, I do think, in a sense, if you imagine people in this world encountering suddenly the supernatural and not being ready for it, that for many people it will be torture. Because they will be, like many people deny the existence of God, or things like aliens, if they were appearing as aliens. And this is going to be world-breaking, mind-bending stuff for people. They're going to be freaking out at the presence of these other beings. They're not human. One thing's for sure when you read this, it's pretty clear they're not human, but they're humanoid. And we get that when we see what they look like. Right? And so in those days shall men seek death. The people are going to wish they were dead. They're going to, I don't necessarily think of people are going to be like stabbing themselves and like, holy cow, I can't die. That would be interesting. And perhaps that's true. That's a very, that would be one very literal way of looking at it. But, I don't think so. I think what they're going to wish they could die, but they're going to feel like, what's the point? You know what I mean? They're not going to be able to die. Because, well, then we'll go just because God is real. And if I kill myself, I'm just going to be right back in front of the throne. You know? And so death will become perhaps not an option. Meaning they'll have lived a life in denial of God and suddenly be confronted with this supernatural invasion. It's going to be terrifying. And also, and for some of them, I've often thought this. One of the things it says about the king of Babylon, Mystery Babylon, who's her husband? Oh, the king of Babylon. That's a callback to Isaiah and also Jeremiah. But also but to Isaiah, where in chapter 14, the king of Babylon, the lament is taken up upon the king of Babylon. It's a very famous passage that some people who are King James only get upset because the NIV translates Lucifer as morning star, which is what Halel ben Shakar in the Hebrew means, bright star, son of the dawn. And Lucifer is Latin and it means light bringer. It's not that he was called Lucifer any other place. They just object because Christ is the bright and morning star. Well, Lucifer also intends to, I will ascend, what does he say in Isaiah 14? I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. That means in the place where God's temple is supposed to be. I will be like the Most High. And Paul draws on that when he says in 2 Thessalonians 2, that he's going to oppose and exalt himself above all that is called God or that is worship, so that he is God, sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And showing himself means not like he's, hey, look at me, I'm God. No, he's making a show. I'm God. Watch, I'll bring fire down from heaven. There was an interesting music video. I guess there's some big song called Revelation by this country music star. It always makes me slightly envious because my Revelation songs aren't very popular. Just a little. But in the music video, I found something kind of interesting. He had Satan portrayed as this dark figure with his black feathers on his coat. And he was like getting ready to make fire. And then there was the angel. Then an angel appeared. I think it was supposed to be Michael. An angel appeared, and he called down lightning from heaven, fire from heaven. And they got it exactly wrong. Satan's going to appear as an angel of light and call down fire from heaven. And the Satan character to me looked like one of the two witnesses, except they were obviously trying to make him look evil. Believe me, they'll try to make the two witnesses look evil, and they have the power of fire, except it comes out of their mouths. They've got it. And it's a pity because he understands that we're going to be here for the tribulation, because we need to be here if we live in those days. But he got the imagery totally wrong, man. If any angels start appearing, bringing fire out of the sky, those are going to be the devil and his angels. Now, I've thought from one of the things it says in Isaiah 14, it says, thou hast destroyed thy land. After it says, but thou shalt be brought down to Sheol, to the sides of the pit. As we see later on in chapter 20, Michael descends with the great chain at the very end. He's going to be down. Michael ain't going to be down here fighting Satan during the thing, but Satan may come against his people. Thou hast destroyed thy land and slain thy people. The seed of evildoers will never be renowned. And this often happens. You see in all types of antichrists, all types of white horse riders, from Hitler down to all of them, they end up killing a lot of their own people in the process of trying to put themselves in the place of God, trying to be the messianic figure. Because like I said, Hitler thought he was a messianic figure. He was going to save Germany, And so Satan, as another false messianic figure, the Antichrist, he's going to have to sort of put up a bit of a judgment on some people. So he's not going to be able to just be nice to everybody. I mean, I suppose. Arnold Murray was very much thinking this is all going to be just this big show on TV, kind of Satan being nice and everybody. That would be very seductive. But then most of the symbolism, almost nothing would be literally true in Revelation, as far as. I don't think he believed anything about like impactors from the sky and all that stuff, except perhaps the great hail. I know he took some of that literally, But he saw the time of the end being this very peaceful time. And he will destroy by peace, as it says in Daniel, right? By peace he shall destroy many. The ultimate version of this, which Antiochus Epiphanes did represent, but he does not the ultimate expression of it. That's what a lot of people understand. It's not just that the scripture, like the prophecies, are for the future. They're for the past, the present, and the future. Just like he said, write the things which thou hast seen, the things which are, and the things which shall be hereafter. There is a which was and which is to come. And a lot of times that is how I approach the scriptures when I teach it, when I teach the prophets. I think about, okay, historically, what did this mean? Okay, what does that mean to me today? And also, what could this mean for the future? And that's a very good way to look at it, in my opinion. You don't have to be, they say, are you a preterist? Are you a futurist? It's like, I believe in all of those interpretations. Like, yeah, I understand people say Revelation sounds like Rome. I'm like, sorta. I mean, really? I don't think so. Not precisely. I mean, there are some things that people could say, because it's easy to do that because, like I said, every false king is going to kind of fit into the same mold. They follow the same pattern every time. Nero, Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, they all have come to the same sticky end too. Not quite. Stalin lasted out, but God will judge. God will judge. Well, he had to wage the Second World War to save the Russian people, and which was somewhat redemptive, considering that he didn't last much longer after that. I'm not saying anything. I mean, just in the sense of like, sometimes, they had to defend they were going to be exterminated. Sometimes you have no choice, I guess. In those days, as a Christian, I sort of feel like, well, my duty is to be exterminated because I'm not supposed to fear people that can kill me. Why should I be afraid? There's nothing they can do to me. Nothing. They can end my life. Oh, this simulation will be over, and then I'll stand before the throne of Christ, and he's going to tell me, well done, thou good and faithful servant. I certainly am working hard to make sure that's exactly what happens. We got to believe. So they're going to torment them, and I say that we're going to, the appearance of them is going to reveal, just as, like, I felt like, in some ways, it's funny because they can't do any harm to me, but I will be somewhat tormented by their presence. I know, because I'm going to be so unhappy about everyone worshiping them. It makes me think of the pandemic. I do, because I think the pandemic is a type of tribulation. It gives you a hint as to how are people going to behave. You saw with masking and in the social distancing and all that stuff, this sort of, it was a mark of the beast-like event. I couldn't buy or sell unless I put a mask on. Actually, of course, that wasn't totally true. Some places you couldn't. Like my wife almost got arrested at Goodwill because she refused to wear a mask, and they refused to let it go. And they called the cops on her. At Walmart, after my brother was the first one, because my brother went in and they were following him all over the store and freaking out. Someone actually laid hands on him, and they're, oh, sorry, and all that. But I started just to finally do it after he did it. I found my courage. At first, I was just going to the delivery. Not delivery. I can't afford delivery. The drive up, where you drive and they bring it out to you. Because I wasn't going to go in there if I had to wear a mask. No, sir. And it was, other places were less, like at Aldi, there was no one at the door, and I went in there and no one said anything to me. So I was like, thank you, Aldi. Because it's like the idea of, making the employees enforce that on people, it's just ridiculous. Anyways, but the mark of the beast is going to be a lot like that. And the people's behavior is going to be much like that. And it is a kind of a test by torture. They make you do uncomfortable things. Isolate people in their homes. That's unhealthy for the human, to be isolated and stay at home. And a lot of people, I remember seeing, I was some comedian guy, I forget his name, I don't want him, Lewis Black. I saw the intro to his comedy special where he was like acting he was showing what it was like for him during the pandemic, especially because someone who lives in the city. I live in the country, so like my life didn't hardly change at all except when I went into town. But being like locked in their apartments, basically. In some countries, they did indeed lock people in their apartments. And that's that is like torture. It's, being confined, solitary confinement is considered a kind of torture, especially if it's for a prolonged period of time. If you make someone alone for years and don't let them have any other human interaction, humans are social creatures. So there was torture. And again, like my dad, they wanted all the old people to be isolated. That's very sad. On the first day of lockdown, I took my kids to visit him. When my daughter-in-law came to visit, even though she had COVID, I still brought her to visit him. Just for a moment, and she didn't breathe on him much, because I believed more in confronting the disease than in running from it. It's like, it's not running from it in fear is not the solution. Same thing with the end times. Don't be fearful. Don't be unbelieving, but be trusting. Physician, heal thyself. Well, you can know these things are true, but not be able to perform them. That's the problem. That's why I like to see in my life manifesting those things which will lead to that outcome. And that's why during the pandemic, the torment of people and the things they were made to go through revealed what kind of people they were. I said, I know people who totally didn't believe in it, but just did all the stuff anyways. They thought it was all a bunch of hooey. They didn't believe in it, but they just wore the masks obediently. And hey, it's not the mark of the beast, so it's not like your soul's on the line. But I felt very strongly not to do that because I thought about people being afraid and never seeing another person without a mask. What happened to our freedom? What happened to our liberty? What happened to sanity? Because especially freedom for me also is because it was just a bunch of lies. The things we were doing. I didn't have a KN95 mask, and even if I did, I wouldn't wear that. Freedoms are for especially to be exercised in perilous times. It's like the whole point of owning guns is for when society breaks down, so you can defend your family. It's not for just owning it in peacetime. When a crisis comes, you can bet they'll want to grab everyone's guns. See what I mean? They will. They didn't try that in the pandemic. In fact, in our state, they didn't even close the gun shops down. Probably because they were afraid if they went that far, people would really get angry, especially people out in the country. Anyways, so I think that is the way I look at that kind of torment. The things you're made to go through reveal your character. That's the information gained from the pain you go through. Now, they won't be able to truly harm me, though I was like, to me, the pandemic was like torture every day. Just the fact that it was going on. But that's not real. That's just me caring about stuff, which is not the same as torture. If I was submitting to it and just staying huddled in my home and wanting to go out but not daring to, wanting to not wear a mask but not daring to, that to me is torment. Now, is it going to be in that form when they come? No, that's not going to be the form. It's going to be the mark of the beast. People are going to, and I don't know if that is the torment per se, but it definitely leads to their torment later on. And like I said, a lot of people are going to be feeling very threatened by the presence of the fallen angels. Because I don't know how friendly they're going to be. He wants to be worshipped as God. So, and this is not going to be voluntary. It's going to be just like the pandemic, mandatory. So the shapes of the horses, they're like horses prepared unto battle. This is the first symbolic part. We're going to look at each of these as sort of symbolic of what they represent. Meaning they're warriors in that sense. They're shaped like horses prepared unto battle. That is an image of a powerful cavalry, which was in the ancient world a very state-of-the-art kind of, someone on a horseback was a very spectacular sight. Maybe I'm going too far with spectacular, but the idea is, riding on horse, prepared for battle, right? On their heads, they had crowns like gold. This is like gold, not necessarily true gold. Maybe that's an indication of their falseness, their false claim to reign and rule over us. And their faces were as the faces of men. They looked like men. It's because angels always appear as humanoids. When they appear as humanoids. They can't appear as a star falling from heaven, obviously, also. But that's when they're far away. with the brightness about him. Remember when Jesus was transfigured, there was this brightness and all that. They also have a brightness. And like I said, Satan himself is transformed, as it says in the King James, into an angel of light, which really means disguised, actually. He comes disguised as an angel of light. He doesn't come with a black cape and all that. He comes on a white horse, believe me. Because he wants to deceive you with that he is the king you've been waiting for. And these are his princes, his nobles. They had hair as the hair of women, indicating their beauty. They are beautiful looking. They are not ugly, things like that. They have hair as the hair of women. Though this is portrayed, if this was all literal, it would be kind of scary, right? But like I said, I definitely think when we get to the fifth trump, we're talking in heavy symbolic meanings. But there is something coming, that is actually going to be real. It is not just like purely esoteric, whatever. We have to have some meaning. It has to translate to something on the ground. Their teeth were as the teeth of lions. Lions' teeth indicative of their viciousness, their mercilessness. As a lion roars on the prey and doesn't let it go. These prophetic symbols are very clearly laid out in the prophets, the Old Testament prophets. The lion is always, it indicates rulership on one hand because it's often symbolic of kings, but also a lion is a very vicious predator. And and God himself, one of the four beasts around his throne is also a lion. Because God himself he is a vicious predator. I mean, in a symbolic sense, when he gets a hold of something, when he lays hold on the prey, he does not let go. Just like a lion. When he sets out to execute judgment, he executes judgment. And he will not let them go free. It's like cats. You ever see cats show mercy? No, sir. Now, sometimes cats do adopt prey animals, like when they've lost a kitten or something like that, but that's a she-lion. You'll never see a male lion do that. You never see a male lion adopt a little wildebeest or something like that. No, only females that lose their young, sometimes they're mammals, they have some heart, and they will adopt a prey animal's calf as their own. Even there have been, odd behaviors with animals, certainly. But the typical behavior is what we want to focus on. Their teeth as the teeth of lions. They're like lions in those respects of the viciousness, and also, the sense of that they think they're superior. They had breastplates, as were breastplates of iron, strong breastplates, well protected. I mean, they're kind of going to be. There's no point in fighting them in that sense. In any, there's no, they're covered. Their vitals are covered. And the sound of their wings. Remember, we're talking about locusts. It was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. Well, for one, they could appear with angels' wings. As angels are often portrayed with wings. Though I don't know, but sometimes they're not, right? So I don't know. But also their means of flight could be create noise, I suppose. Or it could just be symbolic of the fact of going back to they're shaped like horsemen, prepared to battle. And their wings, the sound of their wings is a foreboding sound. Like imagine hearing all these chariots rumbling and coming at you. Fearful. They cause fear. That's why it says the sound of their wings is like the sound of an approaching battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions. The ancient and honorable, he is the head. The prophet that teacheth lies, he is the tail. There is a head and tail idea in a lot of prophetic places. And like I said, you don't always necessarily apply it evenly, but it's a good template with which to think about things. Just like the scorpion has a tail, right? They had tail, and it stings with its tail. There's a front end and a back end. You know what I mean? The front end, often, like on a lion, there's just a front end. It's a business end, right? Where the teeth are. The back end, you can say the claws, but not really. The tail of the lion is not a formidable thing. It's not something you worry about stinging you. But they have a tail that is deadly. Head and tail, branch and rush in one day. The ancient and yeah. So in Isaiah, in one place, he talks about the ancient and honorable being the head, and the prophet that teacheth lies being the tail. There are two parts of the beast, so to speak, which bring about the misleading of the people, because literally it says, for the leaders of my people cause them to err. And that's why I think also the fact that this is references their tail, and it is their tail that stings them. It is, I think, somewhat a hint at that, because I always think of the prophets as all interconnected, especially with Revelation. It's retrospective, looking back on a lot of prophetic literature. And so, symbolically, I think that means that there's a sort of, the poison is in the fact of why is it that when we have the seal of God in our forehead, we cannot be harmed by them? Their sting has no effect. Their false prophecy, because they will be falsely declaring God's word, falsely, and this is what leads people astray. You've got to worship the dragon, which is going to give power to the beast. That's what it says. They worship the dragon, which gave power to the beast. The most explicit place in the Bible where we could presume, probably the most explicit, where it makes it pretty explicit that the dragon, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, is the one who the Antichrist is ultimately going to be. Because really, what man could bring those things about? And if a man did, well, then it would certainly become obvious what they were. But I think it would be much more difficult for a normal human being. Like I said, they could present as aliens, or they could present as multiple things, because the beast has many heads. That's another thing to remember. And the scorpions all over the place. I mean, the locusts being everywhere and all over the place. Who knows what stories they will tell. And just like in the pandemic, you saw Fauci on television contradict himself. One time saying masks we don't need a mask. Then later on saying everyone should wear a mask. Oh, we just lied because we didn't want people rushing out and getting masks. The noble lie, which is a bunch of bunk. There's no noble lies, and not in that sense. And it wasn't a noble lie; it was actually the truth. Most of these, like I said, it's like trying to keep mosquitoes out with a chain link fence, because viruses are much smaller than your cotton T-shirt you wrapped around your face, and that's just a fact. Or a surgical mask. Surgical masks are not. They're meant to keep bacteria out of the wounds, like when the surgeon's talking. They're not meant to prevent airborne viruses. Because airborne viruses aren't really, if it falls on a wound, I don't think it really matters. It's not, most of them are tuned to work on a certain part of the body. Well, I suppose you could get an infection through that, but that's usually not the thing you're worried. Usually airborne viruses need to enter in the lungs. Anyways. And those surgical masks are not meant to prevent airborne viruses. Surgical masks. All right. So they have stings in their tails. And what I think that is like the fact that they sort of have this impact on prophecy. False prophecy is what's going to cause people to be deceived and tormented by the presence of these angels. Because no one's going to understand what's happening. I mean, we will understand what's happening. But most people will not. And then, and so their power is to hurt men 5 months. They have a 5-month window, apparently, if we take that literally. I do tend to think that it is. And so I think, well, what does that mean? Maybe there's a couple things. That the initial period of their appearance, where they are doing all these things, is a 5-month period to get the kingdom established. To get Satan's kingdom on earth, and to also heal the beast and whatever, or perhaps. That there's this 5-month period where they are getting settled in, and everyone's freaking out, but at the end of 5 months, it's kind of settled down, and then and the horror emerges, and all these things come to pass, and perhaps, and then Satan's kingdom is established, and they have a king over them. There's a king. He is explicitly an angel. As I said, who are these? These are his buddies. Satan and his buddies, the fallen angels, and the number one fallen angel of all, the angel of the bottomless pit. Now, Paul doesn't say Satan, it says Abaddon. He's got to be somebody else. He has many names. Lucifer, that old serpent called the devil, and Satan. He's also called the destroyer. And that's what this word Abaddon means, the destroyer. Now there's the word Abaddon does not only occurs a couple times in the Hebrew Bible, once in Job, I believe. And I've looked those up in the past, and they're not very informative. But certainly Apollyon in Greek is very informative. Because every time you see the word the son of perdition, that man of sin, the son of perdition, it is the son of Apollia, which is a form of Apollyon. So when it says, brethren, I beseech you concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering together to him, that you be not soon shaken in your mind or be troubled, whether by spirit nor by word nor by letter as from us, as if the day of Christ was at hand. No, the day of Christ is not about to come. For that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first. That's the whore. And that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. The son of Apollia. Who is the son of Apollia? Apollyon is the son of perdition. And he is the one who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he is God, sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So that's very strong evidence that the son of perdition is indeed an angel, the angel of the bottomless pit. That connection. And that's what I tend to think. And anything else would be easier. You know what I mean? Like any other interpretation would be easier to deal with. A human, or if they present as aliens, I don't believe they're aliens. I just think it's just Satan and his angels. And there wouldn't, and honestly, that would be almost the same. And it would be a harder sell, except to the UFO crowd, right? Because most Christians are not going to worship an alien. So I really, though I'll talk about alien theories and stuff just because it's interesting, and like I said, I like to keep my mind open because I'm not convinced I know everything. But I do think this is very strong evidence that the Antichrist will be angelic, a supernatural angel cast out of heaven. And that's what you see when you see that star falling from heaven. He will bring fire down from heaven like in the video, except that the guy in white there is the evil one. If you see that video, I forgot the guy's name. But he got the portrayal of the devil, and Michael also is a white angel, true. But Satan doesn't somehow appear. He doesn't. That's one of the things that I forgot who it was. He was saying he never understood about Star Wars, because why is the Emperor? It didn't make sense why the Emperor and his protege would be all in black. Usually emperors, put on this air of they're the white horse, right? It was, why are they acting like they're these subversives? They're not the subversives, running around in corners. When you ascend into power, usually you put on white, but it's just for the sake of the movie. But the symbology is wrong, and that sort of bleeds into people's thinking about the devil. Everyone kind of knows he isn't wearing a red jumpsuit like I do in my videos, and having horns and all that. Though that I like that cliche, because then everyone knows it. Because if I just showed a beautiful looking person, right, dressed in all white, what would people think I was portraying? They think, oh, he means Jesus. He means Jesus. No, but that's the way he's going to portray himself. He's going to be disguised as an angel of light. That's what Paul taught. And that is, of course, like I said, in this symbology you read here, you get the sense like, ooh, it's going to be all evil looking. They're going to be all sharp-toothed and looking mean and shaped, like centaurs, half horse, man's face, women's hair. A woman's hair is her beauty. It is part of it, Her hair is given her for a covering. Also, it says, because of the angels, it says, which is interesting. Could that be reference to Genesis 6? It could be. I don't know. Or it could be like the angels of the churches or something like respect for elders. I don't know. No, let's get out of that. So Apollyon, the destroyer. And by peace he will destroy many. And because once they get set up, like I said at the beginning, there could be a little bit of bloodletting or not bloodletting, right? They're not there to kill people. They're there to torture them, and it's going to be torture. Imagine how like someone like an atheist like Richard Dawkins, who spent his whole life, it's not even the evolution part, because there's plenty of people that believe in evolution that also believe in God. That's not the problem. It's and again, evolution isn't something you're supposed to have to believe in anyways, but whatever. It doesn't, to me, it makes no difference. I find all that speculation very interesting. How did the world come into being? Of course, I believe God created it, but also he created it to unfold in such a way that it would be plausibly deniable that he existed. So that he hides himself, as it says in the scriptures. Now, he can be seen by the same factor. Some people look at nature and they say, this must have been the handiwork of some great creator. And other people are like, what are you talking about? It works fine without one. But just the fact that it works without one, how did it all come about? It's like, well, it exploded and blah, 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 blah. But like, even so, why does it work that way? You know what I mean? Like I said, I don't believe God of the gaps. I believe God of the whole show. God is not God of like, he has to fill in here where we can't explain things. That's not, I don't know anyone who even thinks that way. I know in the old days, they used to kind of think like somewhere God has to fit in. It's like, no, he is hidden and is only implied. It is clearly seen in the things that are made. If you have eyes to see it, if the hidden wisdom is revealed to you, yeah, you can see God in all kinds of things. Just in like everything from a drop of rain to to a baby's smile, we see the wonderful works of God. But some people don't, because the wisdom to understand that is hidden from them. Just like what Paul said about if they had known this wisdom, they wouldn't have crucified Christ, because they would have recognized him. They wouldn't have been like, doing that to the man who was the Messiah. They would have believed him. Even if they didn't really, like I said, unlike with the beast and all that, the Lord, you have to have his seal. Satan wants you to receive his mark, of course, but it doesn't protect you against anything. When we have his seal, it actually is protective. The mark, and that's sort of like an interesting, because seals, hold information in, or they make something authentic. Like when a king would seal a document with his seal, that meant the king's seal is on this. That means it's official. And that's the way it is with God. But with Satan, he marks you. What do? You mark things for death. You mark trees for cutting down. That's what marks are for. That's mark it. Yeah, the mark of the beast. It's not the seal of the beast. It's no protection at all. Though for a time it'll seem like, look, we can buy or sell and do like we always did. The world is back to normal, sort of. And to have the air conditioning on again or whatever. It's like, to be able to go to the grocery store and get the food we want whenever we want. People will willingly take this to get, just like they took it in the pandemic, except the pressure is going to be way more. If you had trouble with the pandemic, man, just settle in your mind, okay, that's a problem. We need to get a little bit more, like I said, if it's one thing if you're deceived. But if you know something's wrong and you're doing it anyways, we got to fix that. That can't continue. Like I said, you stumble and you sin, I forgive you. God forgives you. He knows you're weak. He knows your frame. He knows we are but flesh. Interesting here. It says in the, what is this? Helps Word Studies. Basanois was originally of Oriental origin, whatever that means. Because, again, Oriental a lot of times just meant from the Orient, like the ancient Near East. A touchstone, a Lydian stone used for testing gold because pure gold rubbed on it and left a peculiar mark. Then it was used for examination by torture. Sickness was often regarded as torture. Interesting. Because when you're sick, you're often in a state of pain, right? And just like when a scorpion stings you, it's like having a sickness, pain, torture. They will also be sick with the effects of, like I said, they don't have the seal of God as our prophetic understanding of the end times to some degree, or at least, or our service to God, whatever it is that causes us not to be deceived ultimately. Just our walk with Christ, that we are His and He knows us, and that He was knocking and we opened and we supped with Him and He told us what we needed to know and taught us to be the way we need to be. And we're sealed. All right. Let my text back up. So let me get to this sixth angel. I don't want to end it just now, so we'll keep going. One woe is past. There come two more woes hereafter, the two final woes. The final woe is the coming of Jesus, okay? That's the greatest woe of all. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth when that comes. But we will rejoice, because what else can we do? Because we're getting rid of the most, if you thought the world has got evil regimes in it now, that ain't nothing compared to what's coming. The sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God. There's this golden altar we've talked about previously, right? And here's a voice from the altar saying to the sixth angel, which had the sixth trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And so these angels are bound. Interesting, they're again bound. They're in a body of water, just like the pit of the abyss. Is the abyss is a pit with it's like kind of like a pit within a pit, because a water body is a pit. I've had dreams of abyssal water. They're not nice. But the loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. I like living in the middle of the continent. Not that that's necessarily a protection. Saying the sixth angel, okay, loose the four angels which are bound. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for a very specific time, for to slay the third part of men. And what, again, do they just directly go killing people? Or do the actions they take bring about bring about their destruction? Because like I said, Hitler's actions caused millions of Germans to die. You know what I mean? He caused them to die because they fought for him. Right? So, slay usually means that they killed him, though. So I'm granted that's true. It could be that. But notice it mentions, in the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000. So if we go from four angels to a 200,000. That's 200 million, I believe. 200,000, and then add 1, 2, 3 more zeros. Yeah, 200 million. That's a big army. That's a big army. That's the number of people brought into the conflict. A 200 million man army. Still a fraction of the people on Earth, to tell you the truth. But that is a lot of, but again, not everyone would be necessary. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily, when it says their power is to hurt men 5 months, it doesn't mean that they hurt every single individual. Like I said, it's like there's a different, and also there's different shades of meaning there, possibly. Like I said, depending on how you look at the torment. Because like I said, if they went around with literal scorpions' tails, everyone would know what was going on. And so part of it is that the people will not understand. They'll know something's up. They'll think it's the end of the world. They'll know that they should flee from the wrath, but they'll have no place to go. Though, I think they will wish themselves dead, but not see any point in being dead, or like literally, perhaps maybe the fallen angels will intervene and prevent them from dying. That's another thing, is that, like I said, when he comes against his own people, and that potentially, right, when the locust army arrives, they can't hurt us, but there will be other men they focus on in order to establish their credentials. Remember, when Christ comes, it talks about torment in the presence of the Lamb. Torment. So if Satan wants to appear to be the Christ returning, he may round up a bunch of atheists and torture them, and then keeping them alive, saying, this is what it's going to be like in hell if you don't worship me. Because he ain't going to be able to do that to me and you who have the seal of God in our foreheads, because we're faithful. He don't have anything on us. Yeah, we've sinned and all that, but we've washed our robes in the blood of the Lamb. That's why Jesus warns to get it straight. Don't let that day overtake you as a thief. This is going to be like a snare on all the inhabitants of the earth. He could make examples of a bunch of people, drag them in, and saying, you have blasphemed my name. And all the time they've been serving Satan, but he don't care. He's using them to get more people to worship him. And so he shows up. I like this interpretation, to tell you the truth. It's terrible, but if he wants to pretend like he's Jesus, well, you know what happens when Jesus comes? He punishes the wicked. And so he starts off with people who are obviously unbelievers. And then the Christians are all going to be like, yeah, yeah, cheering him on. Just like they are in Israel right now. Just like they are, oh, guys, oh, yeah, go get him, knock him out. Disgusting. Disgusting. Same thing, man. They're going to be like, yeah, yeah, let's see Richard Dawkins. Let's see how he likes torture, huh? And that could be literal. It doesn't say they torture all men. And so they torture people. That could be. That would certainly be convincing for a lot of people. And it'll also up the level of evil. You know what I mean? Because it's amazing to me already. Because I can already see people are all primed to cheer evil on. You know what I mean? See, but Paul, if the people are also tormented in the presence of the Lamb, I think it's fundamentally different the way they're tormented. Like I said, it's very simple that with Satan, the torment is, well, whatever. It could be literal. It could be something else. But when they're tormented in his presence, like I said, I mostly think it's, like it says, they will weep and grind their teeth because they've done wrong and there's no more room for repentance. Just like with Esau, no more room for repentance. And they suffered through life, but instead of, clinging to the Lord, they sought pleasure, and they had pleasure in unrighteousness. And then ended up on the day of judgment, it's like, you're not acceptable. I don't know who you are. That's how bad it is. You call me Lord, I don't even know you. I've never heard of you. I don't know your name. It's not in my book. How terrible. And it says not that God doesn't know everyone, but he doesn't know them in that sense, where he's like, come, faithful servant, who I know, who not just talks to me, but listens to me, obeys me, for whom I am truly said to be their Lord. I am your Lord, because you constantly obey me. And so it's not a question of making mistakes or slipping up. We all slip up. Hopefully less as time goes on. Hopefully we learn from those mess ups. Okay, so this army, this is, I believe, an army of men. I don't think this is referring back to the locust army. Maybe. It could, though, It could. It could be referring back to them, and now they're going to go kill a third part of men. Could be, Because, a lot of people, like I said, they may have a lot of vengeance on their mind in order to seduce the whore. In order to seduce the whore, they've got to sort of go about establishing their kingdom. And a lot of people are going to think this is the kingdom of God. The only problem is Satan has no power to change us into the resurrected body. And that's one of the chief signs that whatever's going on, it ain't of God. But the problem is people just can't tell what's of God and what's not, because they don't have their senses exercised to discern good from evil. That's why they'll cheer on the butchery going on in Gaza in the name of fulfilling prophecy. When the Messiah has clearly called us to make peace, he came not to end men's lives, but to save them. That's our first mission and it's not our prerogative to end men's lives. He never say like, okay, now you go around killing everybody. So thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. Interesting, because that reminds me of the teeth of lions. I wonder if this is referring to the maybe there's 200,000 fallen angels coming. That would certainly be enough to cover the earth, wouldn't it? And there's 4 particular angels bound. They get loosed after they arrive. Maybe after that, the things settle down to go out and carry out this massacre. Or, I remember Arnold Murray saying it's to deceive everybody. He's not going to kill anybody. He almost thought that there would be almost nobody dying during the tribulation. It's just going to be this wonderful time of peace. I don't know about that. That doesn't seem to be quite right to me. When it says slay men, when they first come, The part about you, the reason I start thinking the torment is literal in that first part is because of that fact that they will seek death and not find it, and all that. Because I don't know how to go spiritually around that. Yeah, I mean, like they're going to look for who's death, Satan. They're going to seek Satan and not be able to find him. I don't know what that would mean. But the idea that they can't die because the angels won't let you die, you're going to be tormented so we can show that he is God. See, wow. But they don't have power over us. Thank God. I'm not afraid. They're an interesting. Now, there as the heads and lines, other mouths that should fire and smoke and brimstone. By these three was the third part of men killed. Now, the four angels may be just a particular four fallen angels associated with the army, maybe the four generals from the four corners. Remember, there were four angels holding back the four winds of the earth. I don't think those are the same. They're not. And now maybe these represent ancient kingdoms from around Euphrates or something like that. Something like that. Like remember when it talked about Michael the angel, archangel, and Daniel talks about wrestling with the prince of Persia. Sometimes people think that that's like was it Persia? I forget. But like the four kingdoms that were mentioned in the ancient times, all around the old prophecies. Perhaps those are the ancient spirits that used to run rampant, the former beasts. It's a thought. Of all the armies of conquest of the past, Babylon, Syria. Well, it started with, Assyria was a different story. In the book of Daniel, it starts Babylon, Persia, the Greeks, and ultimately the Romans, I thought, was a good fit. But then there's also, and some people think, Revelation is Romans. And it's all, that says in the latter time of their kingdom, it's all the West, is the way I've come to think of it, because that's, this is the latter time of our kingdom, and the West may be indeed falling because we've started wars. I don't know what they're doing. We aren't equipped for these wars. We don't even make gunpowder in America. I mean, they do in some small places, but we don't have like a military grade gunpowder factory, or not gunpowder. I think it was TNT. We don't make TNT, which is what the explosive is in a lot of shells. They made a new factory to make a new kind of explosive, but it never came online because they don't plan properly and there's lots of waste. Our incompetence and our arrogance are catching up to each other because we aren't maintaining our empire in such a way that we'll be able to keep it. And we shouldn't. It would be much better if we just returned to our borders. I don't think we will, but hey, we can pray and hope. Lord, let it be peace, Lord. Let there be peace in my days. I would gladly just live out my life in peace. I was really excited about the end of history and all that. I didn't really know if I believe it or not. I certainly don't believe it now. History's coming back and roaring its head. Their power is in their mouth. That's an interesting point, right? They have fire and brimstone coming out of their mouth. The two witnesses also have fire coming out of their mouth, which I think is symbolic of, and Satan also, I point out, he calls down fire from heaven as a demonstration of his power. The power of the mouth, what does that mean? It's just like the tongue is an unruly member. It is a fire. It is set on fire of hell is what it says. Ultimately, what their words are what they use to seduce and to destroy. That's how about you destroy people by peace with all the lies. And peace in the sense can be destructive just in the sense of that it can create complacency, decadence, because a lot of people don't know what to do with themselves when they're peace. That's too bad. It'd be nice if we all would just work with our own hands, build things, plant things, repair things, maintain things. But instead, it always has to be marching off to war and destruction. Power of the mouth is the power to speak. And the tail, remember also, and again, the head is the ancient and honorable, the authorities. The authority. They have authority and they have the tail, which is this other thing. And again, a tail is kind of like a deceitful weapon. You don't expect something to come from the tail necessarily. You know what I mean? It's like usually you think about the head. And then when a tail comes out with a weapon on it, then they were likened to serpents. That's a real interesting reference, right? Likened to serpents. Symbolically, of course, that immediately makes me think of that old serpent called the devil and Satan. They are like the devil, liars, and the father of it. And for he is a liar and the father of it. And he bode not in the truth. They have serpents' heads on their tails. And again, that could be a reference to the same locust before, just with a different symbolic collection of things. Changing them, not, because it's like, I doubt this is, or, it could be symbolic of a man army and have reference to weapons of war. I don't really put much stock in that. Because, they have so much more power and there's so much more have available to them, so much more power over us as far as over human beings, if we put us all in the same category, and not over us, the sealed. And that's a comforting thing. While there are going to be a lot of fearful things going on in the earth, when the devil and his angels appear, they won't be able to hurt us until the very end. And then it's not everybody who's going to die. We will not all sleep. But we shall be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. We're still on the 6th, though, so we still got more to go. The power is in their mouth and in their tails. The prophet that teacheth lies, the false prophecy. Their tails were like unto serpents. The lies of the devil, and had heads, and with them they do hurt. Like a scorpion's sting. Well, again, maybe in the first iteration it's like a scorpion, and in the second it's more like a serpent. The rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues. So the fact that it's a mouth-powered fire type stuff going out. Remember, Jesus did definitely teach about a spiritual death. And I want to go there real quick just to remind you. When it talks about them killing, it could be that they're not literally killing people, at least here. Previously it says men would seek death and not be able to find it. That's kind of scary. Not for me, but I don't like the idea of that happening to people. I don't relish the demise of the wicked. But there was something important Jesus said about life and death. Because there's a spiritual death, of course. But let's see how, but just because, there's spiritual death and literal death. But when, and I say there's also literal torment and spiritual torment. And there's a spiritual interpretation of the idea of torment. But the common interpretation of the end of the book of Revelation is that there is no such thing as literal death. There is only spiritual death. And I think that's actually wrong. All right, I want to bring up the Bible collection here real quick. In John chapter 5, there's an important thing to note. I think this, yeah. So make sure you're right. Okay, yeah. Yeah, he said that God was his father, making himself equal with God. See, and again, what people say, like, well, that's what the Jews thought. That's what John thought, actually. Just like when Thomas says, my Lord and my God. They said that God was his father, making himself equal with God. Because, of course, if God was his father, because God is not our father. He adopts us. That's what people don't get. They think, God, we're all God's children. No, we're not. We're his creatures. We become his children through adoption. Anyways, that's not why I came here. Verse 21, for as the Father raiseth up the dead and quickeneth them. And he's comparing it to the resurrection of the dead. Even so the Son quickeneth, that means makes alive, whom he will. For the Father judgeth no man, but hath committed all judgment unto the Son, that all men should honor the Son, even as they honor the Father. He that honoreth not the Son honoreth not the Father which hath sent him. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that heareth my word, and believeth on him that sent me, hath everlasting life, and shall not come into condemnation, but is passed from death unto life. See, we are alive. Those that have the seal of God on their foreheads are truly alive. They've passed from death to life. Even though we may yet die in the flesh, we have already passed, because we believe. And it's not just because we have this thought in our head, it's because we believe. And God knows the difference. Verily, verily, I say unto you. Like a lot of people say they believe, but I don't think they know that they actually don't believe. I think the wisdom to see that is hidden from them. Like my unbelief in the past was so massive. Like I believed, but I had a lot of unbelief. I had so much unbelief. Just like the apostle said, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. It's like we have a mingling of those things. And faith is what brings salvation, not unbelief. You know, the fearful and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and fornicators and sorcerers and all idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone. You know, as they have fire and brimstone in their mouths, that can mean like they're saying, fire and brimstone, man, you better worship the beast or you're going to be going to hell. You know? And the slaying of the men. So what I'm saying is, slaying them could mean you're spiritually dead without Christ. But we have this thing called the apostasy. It's a falling away. Now, in the end, I believe that anyone who falls away from Christ and ends up worshiping the beast and being part of the great whore, he's going to say to them, I never knew you. But even so, it like it says, to him that hath shall be given, and he shall have the more abundance, but from him that hath not shall be taken even that which he seemeth to have. They often seem to be believers, just like they're given that one talent. The man given one talent, he's held responsible like he is a servant, even though in the end, he's proved not to be a servant at all. And so, that in this sixth trumpet, these deaths could be seen. They're killing a third part of men. About a third of the world is Christian, or claims to be. And that number is only going up. Actually, I don't know if that percentage is going up. I mean, it could be going up as a percentage. So, well, Islam is the fastest growing religion, but the population of the world is also growing. In fact, that's how it grows. A lot of religion grows just from people, that. But the people will. So what I'm saying is like spiritual death. You can seem to be alive, seem to have the Lord, but when they fall away, they die. That's death. And so that is a possible symbolic interpretation of the sixth trumpet. The sixth trumpet is the great falling away potentially. And again, I love this passage because in the first instance in here in 21, he's talking about spiritual death in life, comparing it to the resurrection of the day. But then he says later on, where is it? I went too far. Oh, no, actually the verse I really want was 25, when he says, the hour is coming, and now is, when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and they that hear shall live. When we stop listening to the voice of the Son of God, if we think we're listening to it, like that also is a form of death, because they're turning their back on the living water. They're turning their back, because what else can apostasy be but a form of death? They seem to be alive, and now they seem to be dead, spiritually. Because I do believe in, I believe in eternal security, like that you cannot. They say what, once saved always saved, yeah, and not saved never saved. I mean, if you're not saved, you were never saved. It's not like you lost your salvation. That doesn't even make sense. Salvation prevents you from being lost. You don't lose your salvation; you just never obtained it. So. The hour is coming, and now is when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and they that hear shall live. See, some will hear, some will not. For the Father hath life in himself, so hath he given the Son to have life in himself, and hath given him authority to execute judgment also, because he is the Son of Man. His humanity is part of what gives him the authority to execute judgment on men. Because the angels are not to judge us, they are not men, but he will. Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming, in the which all that are in the graves shall hear his voice. You can hear, it's not they that hear. They come forth, they that have done good to the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation. And actually, in the book of Revelation, it is revealed that those resurrections are actually divided by 1,000 years, which could be a symbolic number, but we've talked about that before, and we're going to just wrap things up. So, back to here. So the third part of men killed could be a symbolic reference to the apostasy, or it could be a literal thing. Like I said, I keep my mind open to all those possibilities because I don't have all the understanding that I need. But being familiar with these things and going over them in our minds and remembering them will certainly be helpful because, one, it's part of our commitment to the Lord. We are his servants. We have to seek understanding from him. He's knocking. We got to open up and let him in. And part of that is listening to his word. Part of that is thinking about his word and going about our life. And also, especially the way we live our lives. More than ever, I think that's a very important part. Our personal integrity and not giving ourselves over to sins. Certainly the things that, for which we had to come to Christ in the first place with such guilt. They should not be mentioned among us. And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues. So again, here, this, I think, undermines the idea of the symbolic interpretation. I don't mind undermining my own interpretations because I'm not sure which way to go with it. The rest of men which were not killed by these plagues. Because, what is the other 2/3? What about them? Are they not deceived? They don't think this is... And like I said, it's possible. A lot of people knew the pandemic was BS, but went along with it anyways. A lot of Christians may know that this isn't God, but go along with it anyways to save their own skin, figuring hey, as long as I got the right thought in my mind, I can bow and worship Satan. I can do his work. I can put people in jail for not following him. I can do all these things, and hey, no big deal. Or Satan could literally go out to war against a bunch of people to bring about peace in the world, enemy nations or whatever. I'm not sure exactly what form that's going to take, but it certainly is a decent question. And so the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silver. And again, remember, like I said, when we worship gold and silver, which is symbolic of money, wealth, and the things that gold and silver brings. When we live lives of covetous greed, we are already halfway to worshiping Satan. Christ taught that we should divest ourselves of the things of this life. I mean, I can't do a ministry without my computer, right? And it is a good time to be able to reach people who don't live next door. And the people next door maybe don't want to listen to me. But, and like I said, there's a time for buying swords. There's a time for throwing them away. There's a time for every purpose under heaven. There's a time to drop everything, sell all you have, and there's a time to raise families. It just depends on what the Lord's calling is in a particular time. And he's been away a long time, but we're supposed to be occupying, doing his will, doing his works. And again, the works of their hands is your manifest what you worship by what you do with your hands. It's a part of the thing. It's not that, there's work to be done in this world. We have to feed ourselves. We have to feed our family, of course. Part of that is being obedient to God, because it's as Jesus said, the heathen also love their kids. It's good. You shouldn't abuse your children. I mean, God forbid. You should try to raise them in a godly way. Good. But after we do all the things we're supposed to do, we're supposed to look at ourselves and say, we're unprofitable servants. Because we've just done what was expected of us. We need to go beyond what's expected. That's why he says, go the extra mile. If a man will compel you to go a mile, go with him twain. You're being compelled, well then, do it, and do it with a smile. It's not so easy. I know. But it's what we're called to do. So I want my problems to be like, I didn't do enough good. Not that all the evil of my hands. Oh no, that's not a good thing. They worship idols of gold, silver, brass, and stone and wood, which neither see nor hear nor walk. They're not real. All the things of this life that people covet and seek after are they're going away. Like I said, they're going to lose it all. And I think there will be some element of that in the disaster that unfolds that brings about the calamity of the Antichrist and his angels. Because it just, it is for the sake of all these things that they will worship him. Remember, in the whore are found all this merchandise. Because that's what a lot of people, they go astray because it's, like I said, they want their modern life back. And they're not willing to lay their lives down. We saw, for the sake of a greater thing, such as the Lord himself, or for the truth, just for the truth and for what's right. People aren't willing to sacrifice for what's right. I mean, some people are, of course, but many are not. And they will do great evil to get back to their, back to my nice wooden house. Not that you shouldn't have a dwelling to dwell in, but if you will sacrifice your integrity and your righteousness to obtain it, that's evil. Then it's an idol. You know what I mean? Because when you sacrifice your integrity to obtain the things of the world, that's like that thing is an idol. Because God, you got to obey God first. When we are obedient to God, then we can work with our hands and our works are wrought in him. So it's like building my house, repairing it, doing all these things is a good thing because I'm taking care of what the Lord has given me. I'm being a good steward. But when I, cut corners when it comes to righteousness and I serve Satan in my works, then my house is just a house of whoredoms. And it's an idol to me. The same things that you need to survive, like money and all that, they can be good or they can be for evil. Just like the Lord is a lion and so are the evil angels. You got to pick your poison. Which lion are you going to cross? I ain't crossing the Lord. But the problem is when he's hiding and they're revealed, people are going to worry about the devil they can see and not the Lord they can't. Neither repented they of their murders nor of their, like I said, I don't see no repentance over there for all the murder. All I see people is making an excuse. They say, well, that's war. Innocent people die in war. I mean, if they didn't want to die, they shouldn't have gone to war. They're all responsible. They should all grab Hamas and blah, 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 and all these excuses. You see, I see how good people will excuse murder. People justify all kinds of murders, sorceries. The world is definitely, sorceries, people point out it's pharmakia. I don't think it's pharmaceuticals. Like I said, there's a good use of a lot of things. Certainly, chemical compounds can be used for good. If you go to the dentist and you get a shot of Novocaine, you're not being a sorcerer. But, I do think to try to, when people take like psychedelics to try to have these experiences and contact the spiritual world, I don't think that's the way God has ordained we do that. And I had my run with psychedelic stuff when I was young, and I definitely think that that's not something that we should be participating in. It's dangerous. If that's indeed what it means. Of course, there's other ideas of sorcery. I think about just, it is someone who's practicing sort of the supernatural arts, but not, sort of unlicensed by God, so to speak, or unassociated with the Lord. They're like Simon the sorcerer. He wanted the power to give people the Holy Spirit by laying his hands on them. He wanted to imitate the power of God. He wanted to have, and a lot of times, magicians try to, and I'm not talking about stage magician who's doing this as a entertainment form. I think that's very different when you're doing it as entertainment, because it's very fascinating to be able to sort of baffle people as though you had done something supernatural. I don't think card tricks are sorcery. But someone who uses card tricks to convince someone that they have supernatural power, that is sorcery. Like there was like people who claim they actually have telekinetic power, or the ability to read minds. There are people who do, like mentalists, who do it, and they're very clear that this is not supernatural power. There's a trick to it. And I think that there's nothing sinful about that, because they're actually exposing sorcery for what it is, which is fake. But there is something there, though, just like hypnotism, it does, people can be hypnotized, and that's something that men use to their advantage. And, when someone does it to demonstrate this is something that exists and it's something we should be careful about, and, the way it can be used to manipulate people in society, that's an important thing to know. Someone who actually practices it, though, who uses hypnotic techniques to control people, to obtain things for themselves, that's evil. Fornication. The church is rampant with fornication, and they don't even care. I mean, not all churches do, but some do. Some fly the rainbow flag. Come on. Because that's all. You can fornication, pornea. Obviously pornography falls into that category too, because it's not just actually engaging in fornication; it's fornication of the mind that also matters. And I mean like looking at pornography, but also things like being. Then there's a spiritual aspect of fornication, where we see what is Mystery Babylon. She's made all nations to drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And her fornication is that great apostasy. Christ is promised a chaste virgin. He will get one. But there are those who claimed to be we're waiting for Jesus. We can't wait till he comes and takes us away from the trouble to come. You don't get taken away from the trouble to come. You get a seal to protect you from the evil. I pray not that thou shouldest take them out of the world, but thou shouldest keep them from the evil. And that's how we escape the temptation. We'll be sealed against it. Whatever this really represents in the end, we're going to find out. But the main thing is that we have our integrity and we don't sell out our integrity for the things of this world. That cannot be. The pleasure of this life, the pleasures of sin for a season, that will be the undoing of many. Many. Satan will have evidence against you and you'll have nothing to say for yourself. You know? Because if we aren't actually sealed by God, I'm sure the devils will know. Because I got the seal, you can't touch me. It doesn't work that way. I'm sure they can see it and they can tell. They'll know who's sealed. And they will not be able to touch them until the time is done. We'll be too busy prophesying against them. There's got to be someone to tell them, hey, repent of your murders and your sorceries and fornication and theft. There's a lot of sorcerers in the church and thieves. The thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and destroy. There are a lot of thieves who dress up in long robes to fleece money of the people, but do not seal them against the wrath to come. Because they don't have the wisdom or knowledge to do it. They couldn't do it if they wanted to. They don't have it. The Spirit. All they have is the letter, and all they can do with the letter is kill. All you can do with that is kill. The letter killeth, but the Spirit maketh alive. Spirit knows how to turn that. Because the sword of the Lord in an unskilled hand is just a danger to themselves and to everyone around them. Unfortunately. You know. But that's how it works. The word itself is, it's got hidden wisdom that men, they can look into it all they like, but they'll never find it out. Anyways, thanks for joining me. I know it's been a long study. Look forward to being back again tomorrow. We'll go into chapter 10. Until then, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and he is the fulfillment of the law.
And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard
A voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, say to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river. The Euphrates and the four angels were loose, which were prepared for now and a day and a month and a year from the slain of the God of men, and the number of the army of the horsemen was 200,000.
and I heard the number of them.
And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone. And the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these three was the third part of men killed by the fire.